Lou Pulsifer here to talk about the differences between mechanics, rules, and descriptions. And this is an important question. I recall reading online a note from a student at a game development school, video game development school, who had been assigned the task of writing some rules, and whatever he'd written, it wasn't entirely clear what it was, but I think it was a description, had not satisfied his instructor. He didn't understand the difference, and so that's why I'm going to talk about it here. What's the difference between mechanics and rules? Well, the answer is hardly anything. Mechanics or mechanisms are the methods that the game uses to govern what happens. So, if A happens, then B is going to happen. Well, then A happens in the game, so B must follow. An example, if a player lands on a property, he must either buy it or it is auctioned. If the player lands on a property, then one of those two things must happen, and so on. Those are mechanics. And even in a fairly simple game, there can be a lot of mechanics. Only in really simple games like tic-tac-toe and checkers can you get a game where there are a few mechanics. So what are rules? Rules describe mechanics clearly and concisely so that the players can enforce the mechanics in the game, can cause the mechanics to happen where there's not a computer to enforce them. So there's really very little difference between rules and mechanics. Mechanics are the methods themselves, rules describe those methods, but they should amount to the same thing. Except, people also use the term rules as a synonym for the rule book. And a rule book contains more than just the rules. The rule book might contain developer credits, who designed it, who playtested it, and so on. Play examples, which are not strictly part of the rules. Historical accounts, if it's a historical game. Designer's notes about why he designed it or the way he did. And that may lead to some of the confusion between mechanics and rules. If rules means the rule book, then there is a difference between mechanics and rules, a very significant difference. Okay, a game consists of mechanics which must be precise. But when a player or players plays the game, they bring their own emotions, their own points of view to it. And then when they interact with the mechanics, that engenders more emotions. Only through the mechanics, but it still engenders more emotions. And hence we have something called the MDA, which describes what actually happens in a game. Mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics. You have the mechanics. The dynamics occurs when the player or players works with the mechanics of the game. And then you have what was originally called aesthetics, but I prefer impressions or emotions, which are engendered by this. And that more or less determines whether the player enjoys the game or not. Now, what about descriptions? Well, descriptions are written to inform, they're not written to specify. You could think of rules as being like a computer program, and descriptions are like a narrative. So they can be imprecise and they can even be incomplete, as long as they get their main points across. They can also, descriptions, consider the emotional content that isn't part of the mechanics themselves. So a narrative game design document, one that uses words to describe the game that hasn't yet been made, the game design document is both a description and a precise listing of mechanics. On the other hand, a rule book for a tabletop game must take emotion into account. Even though it isn't part of the rules, it's part of the game. So it can be part of the rule book. So here's a summary. Mechanics must be precise, rules must be precise. Rule books include more than just precise rules. And game design documents must be both precise when they describe mechanics and imprecise when they consider the emotions involved in the game.